Okay, welcome everybody. This is Blocking in the Sand. My name is Matthew Lueck. I am the head VOGO coach up in Prince Albert, and this is what we'll be going through today. So a little overview, little blocking 101, just kind of the basics of blocking. We'll go through some eye progressions and how they kind of differ a little bit from indoor to outdoor. We'll talk about some techniques. We'll talk about different signals, and then we will go on to talking about where we block and why in the game of beach volleyball. So blocking 101. So blocking is a valuable part of being a successful beach volleyball player. In order to be a really good blocker, you got to be disciplined and adaptable, and so that involves working a lot with your defensive partner and changing up your game plan in order to have the most effective defense. Blocking is designed to limit the opponent's offense and create transition opportunities for your team. And although blocking is similar to indoor, there's also quite a few differences that we'll go through later on. So first thing we'll kind of go through here is some eye progressions. So just like indoor, the eye progressions here are ball setter, ball hitter. So obviously the first one, we want to identify the ball. So the first thing we're doing there is seeing where the ball is going, where the passer is mostly going to be passing the ball. From there, we're going to go identify the setter and the setter's location. So the reason why this step is a little bit different than in indoor is in beach, we have to kind of keep the idea that that setter might attack the ball in the second contact. So we really have to be vigilant as a blocker and staying in between our hitter and the setter at that point so that we're able to either take a step and block the setter if they choose to attack it, or take our step after the ball has been set. So that third point, identify where the ball is set or where the ball is going. So that's when we've identified 100% that the setter is not going to attack the ball, and we're going to shift over to the hitter. And what we're doing is all that ball is telling us is what direction the ball is going, and that's which way we're stepping. Now the last one is identifying the hitter. So as soon as we've identified the ball and which direction it's going, we're looking down to find our hitter. And what we're doing is we're checking their angle of approach, we're checking their speed of approach, and that's going to dictate how we're going to go block. So next we're going to talk about some techniques. These are just two ways that personally I blocked, and also two ways that in doing a little bit of research online, this is the most common you're going to find. So really bare bones explanation. So the major difference, first of all, from beach blocking and from blocking indoors, is that there's hardly any swing blocking in beach. It just doesn't occur very often. The first technique is, I just call it the square up technique. Simply all it is just that your body is square to the net, or your feet are perpendicular with the net. That being said, that your feet are going to create a T shape with the net. So if you look at that top picture there, we can see those are my feet there, and you can see that kind of gold lining between the carpet and the linoleum. And what's happening here is my feet are creating a T shape with that shape. The next one is a step close. You can see that in that bottom photo there, my feet are actually staggered. So my right foot's actually hanging back at roughly a 45-degree angle. And we'll talk about why some people choose to do this in the next few slides here. So first we'll talk about that square up. And that's that first picture we saw where both feet are square to the net, your shoulders are square to the net. And we're making that T shape with our feet the whole time. So if the ball is going left or going right, what we're doing is we're shuffling left or we're shuffling right in order to stay with our hitter. So what we'll do here is we'll check out a video. I'm just gonna exit out of here. And we're gonna watch this guy right here up in the front row. You can see a little crossover, that's no big deal, but he's shuffling along the net. Right there, you can see he's kind of stuck in between the hitter. Hitter's actually is right behind him. He's kind of stuck between the hitter and the setter here. So he stayed with the setter just long enough to determine that the setter was going to go set the ball instead of attack it. You can see here, he gets into this big crouch phase, or this big loading phase. And this particular athlete has actually got quite a bit of range of motion. So this isn't typical for an athlete to have this much range of motion. This is pretty impressive stuff. But yeah, we'll see here, he kind of really explodes up and he goes to take away the line and it's attacked across there. So if we kind of head back to our presentation. So like I said before, you can really notice the load and the crouch and the jump phase with this particular blocker, but the key thing here is that his shoulders stayed square to the net and his feet made that T shape with the net the entire time he was blocking. So next up is that step close. This is the one where that foot was hanging back around that 45-degree angle. So the biggest upside to this approach is the fact that the blocker is able to get that extra bit of momentum into their block to get a higher jump or to get a more explosive jump. Traditionally, what I've seen with the athletes I've worked with is that a lot of players that are undersized tend to use this more often, or they use it when they pull or peel off the net quite often, and it just depends on the team you're playing. So what it does with pulling and peeling is that foot's already dropped back at that 45-degree angle, so you already have your first step down in order to peel off the net and get back into a defensive position. So again, we'll kind of exit out here and we will head to a video. And we'll just take a look here. So we're watching number 1 here. See, it kind of shifts to slow-mo. So quite similar. This one's a little more difficult to see, but quite similar. You can see that he's kept his feet pretty parallel with the net. I want you to really watch the last 2 steps he takes here, and you can really see how he kind of hangs back his right foot right here, and that's when we really see that extra step into his jump, and you'll see him get a pretty good jump out of this. So right there, that last step really goes up, takes away the line, and gets a nice block there. So like I said, this biggest thing about this is really that you get that little extra momentum on your jump and you get that little extra height. And so when you have a little bit of a shorter blocker or you're a shorter team, maybe this is the approach that people choose to use. So next thing we'll go through is some signals, and these are basic symbols. So just having a 1 means line, having 2 fingers up means cross. The reason why there's 2 hands up here is this hand would represent what we're going to block the player on the left-hand side of the court, and this hand right here is going to represent what we're blocking the player on the right-hand side of the court. By all means, blockers can choose to block different things for different players, so it doesn't have to be the same all the time. So next thing we're going to get into is a dive block line and a dive block cross. So basically what this is a dive block line. We'll talk about it more in a second, but we're still going to end up blocking line of just giving the illusion that we're blocking cross. And a dive block cross is when we're giving the illusion that we're going to block line, but we actually end up blocking cross. So a good rule of thumb here is that whenever we're going to block line, we put up an odd number of fingers. And whenever we block cross, we're going to put up a even amount of fingers. So split block, this one's a little more uncommon, but I find usually blockers will use it when they're in the middle of the court and they want to take away sharp angles. So instead of keeping their hands together, they spread their hands really far apart to take away those sharp angles. A reed block is very similar to a middle and indoor doing a commit block. So they're going out and they're specifically taking away a hit from a player. So in beach, it just means that the blocker has taken upon themselves to make a read and go block where they think that the attacker is going to attack. So we'll kind of shift here and we'll go into where we block and why. So blocking line, that's that 1 symbol we saw. It just means that basically what we're going to do is try and take away whatever hitter's line shot. So in this picture here, what we can see is the circle is the ball here, H stands for hitter, the S is the setter, and the D is our defender. And then, so these two lines are going to represent the hands of the blocker. So in this case, you can see that the left hand of the blocker is on the ball. So what that's doing is that left hand is taking away this hard line shot. Now, the right hand is not going to get too far away from that left hand, but basically what this right hand is doing is kind of taking away this seam shot between the defender and the blocker. And the reason why the blocker is going to do that is just to kind of shrink as much of the court the defender has to be worried about with a strong, hard attack. So what this does is this limits that hitter from hitting anywhere in here hard. Now what this does open up is that this hitter can now hit a high roll shot above the blocker, but hopefully our defender is going to be able to come under and pick that up. Looking into it, if you're just starting to play the game, I think blocking lines is just the easiest way to go about it. It's the easiest for a blocker to kind of think, okay, I just have to take away this part of the court. But yeah, it's just an easy way to kind of get started into blocking. Ooh, let me skip this slide here. I'll just have to go back. So blocking cross. So traditionally, blocking cross is optimal for two reasons. You can take away the most court possible, and you can kind of make a hitter's hard shot more difficult. So what I'm trying to say is, basically what's happening here is that, again, that the left hand is on the ball here, and what we're doing again is taking away this seam shot again, and we're just leaving this sliver of court for the defender to have to really take away a hard line shot. What this does do is it opens up a lot of this court for a hitter to do a roll shot on. The hope is that once our defender has identified that they're able to go kind of pick this stuff up. But ideally what we're doing here is taking away as much court as we can so that the hitter cannot hit a hard ball. Okay, so now we're going to get into the dive blocking that we talked about earlier. And so you can kind of see this number 1 and number 2 here. So, well, first we'll talk about the dive block cross. So dive block cross is basically when the blocker is in a load position and takes a slight step towards the sideline, or in this case, a slight step towards the line. So what this does is it gives the cue or the illusion to the hitter that the blocker is going to block a line. As that hitter begins to elevate or as they begin to jump to hit the ball, instead of staying at the line, the blocker is actually going to take a step towards the middle and shift into the middle so that when they go to block, what they're doing is actually taking away cross. So what this is just, it's something that teams use towards the end of sets to kind of play a trick on the other team. So we can kind of earn that point to get the game's been 18-18, 19-19. We're kind of getting to those last 3 points of the game. It's something that a lot of teams will kind of pull out of their pocket in order to earn a point to get a little bit of separation from another team. Dive block line, super similar, it's just the opposite. So instead of the blocker blocking cross, they're going to end up dive blocking to the line. So they're going to take that initial step towards the inside of the court, again, giving that illusion that they're going to block cross. As the hitter goes to jump, they're going to take that step back out to the right, and they're going to block line. So you can see it's a lot of the same angles as just blocking cross or line. Defenders in the same spot, but it's just an attempt to kind of trick the opposing hitter into hitting into our block or hitting a shot that's easier for our defender to play defense on. So here's that split block we were talking about earlier. Again, not something I've seen very common in my playing or even coaching. But what we see here is you can see the ball is right in the middle of the court, and traditionally that's where I've seen this happen more often than not. And what the blocker is doing here is just trying to take away these sharp shots, as you can see. So what this does is forces the hitter to kind of hit roll shots here, or trying to hit straight down on their defender. Ideally, what's going to happen is if they hit hard, our defender's in a decent position to pick that up. If the hitter does decide to roll, hopefully your defender is making that read to go pick that stuff up. Okay, so the on ball or commit block. So you can see here the hands are really, really close together and the ball's almost in the middle of the hands. So the reason for that is that the blocker is up there to try and take away as much of the court as possible. They are going to be super aggressive in trying to get a block on this particular play. Usually this happens if a blocker feels they have a really good read on the attacker, or they have a really good read, and just in that particular situation, they go up and they make a gut call that they're going to go up and get a block. Another way this kind of comes into play is if a ball is really tight. If we see an attacker coming in really hard and the ball is tight, maybe the blocker is going to go up and really try and route the ball to really take away as many options from that attacker as possible. So to review here, blocking is a really vital part of defense, and it's only effective when it works alongside with your partner or your defender. In order to be a good blocker, you have to be disciplined and take away courts. You can't be preoccupied about getting blocks all the time. It's really about shrinking the amount of court that your defender has to play or has to play defense on. Super important that there's tons of verbal communication and tons of communication with your hands. We didn't really talk about much about giving signals in transition, but I'm sure that'll come in another presentation. Basically, what it boils down to is that there's tons and tons of schemes and techniques that people use for blocking, and these are just a minor few of things that people have done that I've done. Use them if you can. If you can't, or if you have different ways of doing stuff, and it works for you, awesome. But it really boils down into what works for you and what works for your partner and what works for you as a team. Obviously, things aren't going to be the same for every game, every opportunity. So it's important to be adaptable and find out what works for your team against another team and whatever. So hopefully this helped some of you guys that maybe don't do a lot of blocking or you're a little younger in the game. Hopefully this helps you kind of give a little crash course in the blocking, and I hope you guys enjoyed it and have a good day.